Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency, 504-556-0809 or davemietteINSagency.com.
For over 48 years, Southern Tires and Auto Repair has provided services across the New Orleans metro area. Southern Tires offers a range of tires for all vehicles and ATVs. We also have a full suite of auto repair options, including brake repair, rim repair, custom exhaust, steering and suspension, and so much more. Southern Tires and Auto Repair, 2550 Hickory Avenue in Metairie.
Cnc Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, Cnc provides patient-centered care for your entire family. Cnc Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we will cover all the home teams. We will talk about the New Orleans Pelicans, the New Orleans Saints, the LSU Tigers, and the Tulane Green Wave. So we'll cover the gamut tonight. And joining us on the program tonight, award-winning journalist Les East of Crescent Sports, and so much more. Les, welcome back to the program. Always good to have you, my friend. How are things in your world?
Pretty well under the circumstances.
Yeah.
Thanks, Eric. Good to be back here, as always.
Tell us a little bit about some of the publications you're writing for so folks can find you.
Yeah, I'm, of course, writing for Crescent City Sports, and we have not missed a beat during these trying times. We've continued to generate as much, if not more, fresh content, even without new events going on. And hopefully that's about to change here.
Yes. Which
we'll talk about. And in fact, I think in the last couple of weeks, Ken Trahan's really been at the forefront of doing a lot of stories on what's been going on in society and sports.
True.
And so a lot of good stuff there. So I'm kind of proud of the way we've soldiered on through that. And then Saturday Down South and LSU, we're back online with fresh content there. So looking forward to that.
Right. And of course, Les is he covers the Saints, he covers the Pelicans, covers the LSU Tigers. Again, we'll dabble in Tulane as well. So again, a guy that covers it all. And I've seen a lot of stuff here in New Orleans and the state of Louisiana when it comes to sports. And of course, right now the Pelicans are just about ready to start their season. They left for Orlando on Wednesday. Well, the good news for the Pelicans is Alvin Gentry will be able to coach the team. There was a lot of conjecture on, again, whether because of his age, if he would be able to coach the team. Him, like a lot of coaches that are above 60 now, have had to go through a special medical evaluation to be able to make sure that, again, they would be able to handle if there would be a problem with, again, coronavirus or COVID-19 outbreak within that bubble. And again, he has been cleared to be able to coach. And I think that's huge for this team going into this. It's already uncharted waters having to deal with this, again, this restart of the season in a bubble, the play-in tournament they're going to have here. And then of course, not having your head coach, the guy that's been the, stability of the franchise for at least this young team this year would have been a blow.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest issue with trying to restart this season after suspending it on March 11th is just the lack of continuity, and if somebody were to lose their head coach, and Jeff Bezdillik, one of the assistant coaches, is not going to be there.
And so is Janelle McMillan. He's also out. He's out. He's out because he's having a child. Him and his wife are having a child. Bezdillik is again just his age and at risk for the coronavirus or COVID-19.
Right. So if Alvin weren't going to be there, that would have really created an unstable situation. So that's good news for the Pelicans that he'll be there, because this is a team that went through a lot of changes during the offseason, a lot of changes early in the season because of injuries.
Yes.
And they were starting to find themselves when the plug got pulled on the season. So it's good that he's there. They need that to have some sort of continuity and see if they can regain where they were and build from there, because they only have 8 games to try and find their way into the playoffs.
McMillan, one of the young and up-and-coming coaches in the NBA. He will be a head coach one day in the NBA. You can book it. Comes from a great pedigree. Of course, he just had a newborn son. Bezdillik is one of the best defensive coaches in the NBA. And again, not having him on the sidelines is going to hurt this team. I mean, you can't sugarcoat it to say, well, they can get through it. Not having his defensive mind is going to hurt this team.
Yeah, it is. And Brandon Ingram said the other day on one of the video conferences that he thinks, the offense won't be a problem. Everybody knows how to score. That you can you fall back on your instincts, a lot of isolation, a lot of one-on-one stuff, and you can still pick up your offense pretty quickly. But the defensive end, there's a lot of communication that goes on there, a lot of unspoken understanding of your teammates on the defensive end. And Bezdillik, is new to. He was one of the transition pieces to start the season. So. The defensive end is going to be a challenge for them without him, and also under the circumstances. So that's going to be interesting to watch. But I think that they shouldn't have any problem putting points up with the people they have.
I would agree with you. That end of the floor, defensive end of the floor, before, again, the stoppage in play, I thought they were finally coming around and playing much better defense. Now, having Derek Favors back had a lot to do with that. Bringing Zion back off of injury, again, in his presence there as well. But again, more than having Favors back, what he did on the inside in terms of helping the defense. But again, you're on the fly here. He's watching what's going on the defensive side of the ball, and he's making adjustments throughout the game. The question is, again, who does that fall to now? And are they able to run Bezdillik's system? Can they do it effectively?
Well, we don't know.
Right.
That's a good question.
So many unknowns.
No, I think the biggest turnaround in the defensive improvement and the team's improvement after that 13-game losing streak was Derek Favors coming back. I don't think there's any question about that. I think the players are going to have to take it upon themselves. I think a lot of the slack left by Bezdillik's absence is going to fall on the players. And I think Drew Holiday is going to be a big part of that, and Favors will be as well. But if you have Lonzo Ball and Drew Holiday defending up top, Favors and Williamson underneath, and a lot of communication that I think will be led by Drew, I think they can get by defensively, but it's going to be an adjustment period. And like I said, it's only 8 games, and they have a gap that they have to close in those 8 games. And
you mentioned those 8 games, and again, we'll get into the schedule in a moment. But again, this is a situation where you got to hit the ground running. David Griffin talked about that this week. Again, this is uncharted territory for every one of these teams, but you can't ease into this now. You got to be ready to go, and you got to be ready to be playing at a high level immediately once again you start these games. And the first 2 games for the Pelicans are very difficult as well. We'll get into that in a moment. But this is a healthy team right now. Again, with the exception of Darius Miller, every other player will make the trip. They signed Sedarius Thornwell, former LA Clipper. He's on the roster now to fill out the 17 players. One of the really good things that has happened again through this coronavirus shutdown is the ability for Zion to be able to work out at the facility. And again, if you've seen the pictures, you've seen the videos of Zion Williamson, again, he knocked off the baby fat and he looks chiseled and ready to go. I mean, again, if you thought again that he was physically imposing, just coming off of knee surgery, now this is a guy that's been in the weight room and been working out at the facility, again, throughout the entire shutdown, and he looks like a different player physically.
Yeah, he is in better shape. He looks like he's, like you said, chiseled a little bit more, even though he already was.
Yes.
His conditioning, I'm sure, is better. He's farther removed from the knee surgery. Apparently his outside shot has gotten better based on what his teammates have said. So, and he was playing at a very high level when the season was shut down. So I would expect him to be one of the bigger stories in the NBA when they do start back up, because I think he's going to play really well and he's going to be exposed on national TV quite a bit. The other thing is I think Brandon Ingram was kind of beat up.
Yes.
Before the break, so I think that's going to help him.
Right. Also, again, J.J. Redick goes out with a hamstring injury, which again, he would have missed games down the stretch as the Pelicans were trying to catch the Memphis Grizzlies. That would have hurt them. But again, this team was finally playing with great chemistry. And I've said this again since the stoppage. You know, again, how quickly can they get the chemistry back that they had before? You know, they were passing the basketball. They were playing much better defense. They were running the ball. Again, having a guy like Zion, again, who attracts so much attention means a lot. But again, they were a different team than they were without Zion, where again, tossing up a bunch of threes. There was a lot of playground ball in the early in the season. This team had come together. Lonzo Ball was playing his best basketball of the year. And of course, you still had a situation where Brandon Ingram and Zion were trying to figure out, again, how do they coexist on the court. All those chemistry issues were being worked out then. Now you're starting over again.
Yeah, you are. And I think the probably the biggest development from the beginning of the season to March 11th was Lonzo Ball.
Yes.
I don't know if I've ever seen a player improve that much within the context of less than a full season. There are a lot of reasons for that. He was hurt early in the year, new team, mostly new teammates except for Josh Hart and Brandon Ingram. And he's still a young player. He's still learning. So I think if he can pick up where he left off, that would be huge. And then I think really the biggest key to this whole thing in terms of the glue and the leadership is going to be Drew Holiday. It's his team. He's the leader. He sets the tone offensively and defensively. And I think he is going to be, even though Williamson will probably be the biggest impact player on the floor, I think Holiday, in terms of pulling everything together under unique circumstances, is really going to be the key guy.
We talk about health, and you're talking, again, this is a situation where you have to restart. There's a lot of individuals out there that are trainers that, again, that are physicians that are looking at this. And again, the one big worry is, again, with the inactivity out there for a lot of these players, will there be these injuries that they crop up? You know, from the serious injury to, again, those nagging injuries that keep you out. And then, look, we haven't even talked about if a player or players test positive for the coronavirus and ultimately have to quarantine. I mean, when you look at the schedule, how quick the schedule goes from July the 30th to August 13th, you lose somebody early. You lose them for the entire 8-game schedule going into the playoffs. So again, we don't know what the situation is down in Orlando. Again, how they're going to handle this bubble and if they can get through this. But I mean, I just want to warn the audience out there and those that are fans of the Pelicans. You know, 1 or 2 guys get the coronavirus within that team, and then they're probably gone for the entire 8-game play-in tournament.
Yeah, I would think so, because they're going to be quarantined and they're going to have to pass probably multiple tests where they're negative before they're able to return. So, yeah, anybody who tests positive at any point is probably done for the lead up to the playoffs. So that's going to be a problem. But also the injuries you talked about before, and Josh Hart alluded to a German soccer team that started up under similar circumstances and had a series of injuries in their first match back, because you can't simulate game action. Right. And so these guys, I'm sure they've kept in good shape. I'm sure the training staff's done a good job in getting them ready. But they have not been, and they're going to get 3 scrimmages. Right. They practice tomorrow afternoon. They'll have 3 scrimmages before they play. But they're not going to be playing NBA intensity games until they play one. Right. And even with no fans in the stands, you know, it's 8 games till the playoffs. When that ball goes up, they're going to play like it's the playoffs and like they've been playing for 6 months. And their bodies may not be able to handle that, at least for some people. you're inevitably, I think, going to have some injuries, probably more than you would have at the start of a regular season in October. And then, of course, the coronavirus thing takes it to an entirely different level.
Yeah. And then you talk about the older players, like a Derek Favors, who's again been often injured throughout the season, who again I think is a real key to this team being able to again get into the playoffs, again advancing the playoffs. Of course, we don't know again what's going to happen when you get in and you have to play the number 1 seed. It is what it is. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But again, older players, where again those injuries can be a little bit nagging and keep you out. And look, there's a lot of guys, when they get that kind of nagging injury, they're not going to press it, okay? Because they know, again, contract coming up next year. Am I going to push this thing? This is 8 games. We might be one and done. A lot of guys, I think, will err on the side of caution here instead of saying, no, I'm going to push through this thing.
Yeah, there are so many factors here because it's a unique circumstance. And the easy thing is to say, the better organizations will do the best because they're the better organizations and they are probably doing the best job of learning about this and preparing for it. But a lot of it's going to be luck. You know,
it's true.
You know, who's going to get hurt just because of a fluke? Everybody is going to be more susceptible to injuries or getting the virus because of the circumstances. But who gets it and who doesn't could be a fluke. It could just be luck. So you have no idea how this is going to play out. The seedings are going to mean less than they normally do because there's no home court advantage in the playoffs. And who knows if the Lakers and the Bucks are going to be the 2 best teams now. They were from October to March, but they may be the number 1 seeds after all, but that doesn't mean they're going to be the best teams now. So no one knows. And there's going to be luck, there's going to be uncertainty, and let's go along for the ride and see what happens.
It's exciting because, again, it's a restart. But again, you could be in a situation where, again, if team members test positive, especially guys that you're counting on, okay, let's say if you're Los Angeles Lakers and you lose a LeBron James or an Anthony Davis, what is your shot of, again, holding off a Pelican team, in a 7-game series? I would say Pelicans are a better team without those 2 guys on the floor, right? So again, it comes down to that as well. So it is an unknown, and look, they're already complaining about the food they got down at Disney World. So that was that's the first days there. So this is still a work in progress. I think no matter what, this is a good thing for this franchise. Again, this 8-game play-in, and then maybe if they make the playoffs, some are saying, well, it's, because of the uncertainty and this is not a real playoffs and you're not, traveling and everything else. No. I think getting in and having to deal with the adversity that you're seeing here and getting a taste of playoff basketball, because we know it goes up a level. Okay, I think again, this is good for this young team no matter what.
Absolutely. I remember Chris Paul's rookie season, or maybe his second season, they were flirting with the 8th seed late in the season. A lot of people were saying, well, we don't want to go to the playoffs and lose in the first round. Get some more ping pong balls. No. Let Chris Paul play in the playoffs against the best team in the conference. It'll accelerate his development. Same thing here. Nothing but good can come from this experience. Playing. Essentially the playoffs start July 30th. You got 8 games to get into the playoffs. So every game has playoff implications. So it's like already being in the playoffs. So even if it's only 8 games, that experience is going to be helpful for a team that's got a lot of young players, and it also has a lot of new pieces that have to fit together. And if they do get into the playoffs, and I would give them a reasonable chance of doing that, then it's even better that they get to play in the actual playoffs.
I would agree. And look, let's break it down, because you've got a lot of young players that again are contributing to this team that have never been to the playoffs. The ex-Lakers have never seen the playoffs before. So again, this is uncharted territory. Yes, Derek Favors been there. Yes, Drew Holiday's been there. Yes, again, Etuan Moore and J.J. Redick have been to the playoffs. But the young core that's going to take this team over the next 5 to 7 years have never tasted playoff basketball before. So this is huge for them to be able to get their feet wet, no matter what the circumstances that are surrounding this, one way or the other. Now, again, it would be a death blow for them if they lost players to coronavirus like any other team, but still, this is a good thing for them to be involved in this. And for those that don't realize this, as Les was saying, this is a sprint. July the 30th, they take on Utah. On August the 1st is the Clippers. On August the 3rd, they take on the Grizzlies, who they're battling for that 8th seed. They take on the Kings on the 6th. That was the team that they were supposed to take on when they shut it down on March the 11th. Then the Wizards, who are going to be, again, like a G League team because of the amount of players that they've lost. Bradley Beal won't be playing and others. Again, then the Spurs, who again will be without LaMarcus Aldridge. The Kings again, and then the Magic. Again, there have been some complaints that the Pelicans have the easiest schedule going into these playoffs, but it is deserving considering they had the easiest schedule in the last quarter of the NBA season.
And the NBA laid it out when they released the schedule. They went step by step and explained how they did their best to replicate what the schedule would have been if they had not shut down. Obviously, they couldn't do it exactly right, but they tried to approximate it. And so the Pelicans would have had one of the easier schedules, and now they have one of the easier schedules.
Right.
And the NBA tried very hard to be faithful to what the schedule would have been. And so I don't think there's any grounds for anyone to complain about that.
Let's talk about Alvin Gentry, because again, I think that's going to be a real kid. First of all, do you think because of what happened this year, stoppage in play, coronavirus, play-in game, say the Pels don't make it into the playoffs, so say they bottom out, don't do well, whatever it is for whatever reason, does that affect Alvin Gentry coming back? If the Pelicans do really well, get into the playoffs, does that help him in terms of a case of returning? And with this young team, is this the year to be able to make a decision on the next 5 years, considering his age as well? Because that has to be a factor here. If you're looking at a team and you're looking to build this team for the next 5 to 7 years, do you start this season, this upcoming season, with, again, a new philosophy, a new coach that, again, you hope is going to be the guy that's going to take this over the next 7 years?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's complicated.
Absolutely.
And, I thought last offseason could have been a time to make that change because you had new management coming in, you had the number 1 pick in the draft, and it would have you could have made a good case for bringing in a new coach and start pulling all those pieces together with David Griffin and Zion Williamson and the busy offseason, the post-Anthony Davis era, bringing in a new coach. David Griffin, who knows Alvin Gentry extremely well from their time in Phoenix, decided Alvin was his guy and extended his contract and brought him back. And so he made the decision that Alvin was the guy and deserved this opportunity. I don't think you can say he deserved to have this season and then under these circumstances say he no longer deserves that opportunity based on what's happened with the injuries and the suspension and the unique circumstances now. I don't see how a change after this season, regardless of what happens in Orlando, would be logical after the decision that was made last year. However, you can also say because of Alvin's age, because you have a generational talent in Zion Williamson, now is the time to get a young coach who can develop Zion Williamson and build this franchise around him over the next 5, 10, 12 years. So you can make a case in either event that's a reasonable case. And David Griffin's a very smart guy. He's had a lot of success in the NBA, and I'm sure he can sort through it better than I can. But it's complicated, like I said.
I will say this, and I've said this all along. Like Gentry, don't like Gentry, the system that Gentry runs is perfect for the personnel he has here. When you look at Lonzo Ball, you look at Brandon Ingram, you look at Zion, you look at the young pieces on this team, Alexander Walker, Jackson Hayes, a lot of the guys that are going to be the core of this team going forward. His system is perfect for these young players.
Yeah, it is. And I think they built this team in a lot of ways to fit what Alvin likes to do, because Griffin was there in Phoenix and they had a lot of success running this system with similar types of talent. So it makes sense that the way they have the system and the coach who put the system in and the players that Griffin chose to put into that system, it all fits together logically. And that also works in Alvin's favor for coming back. And I would be surprised if he were not given an opportunity to coach this team again next year. But things are so strange because when the finals end, it's 6 weeks till next season starts.
Right.
So, I mean, the whole thing is just...
Yeah, how do you turn it around that quickly, put in a new system, and this might not be the year to do it because, again, of the quick turnaround. To your point, I agree. And let me say this, and I've said this a bunch. I'd like to get your take before we go to break. I think the December start for the NBA, as it pertains to the city of New Orleans and this franchise, is perfect. It is a perfect time of the year to start Pelicans basketball here in New Orleans. The NFL season, college season is winding down, and then the focus can turn to the NBA. Look, you got a generational superstar in Zion Williamson. You had a superstar in Chris Paul, and still nobody paid attention until football season was over. Right. So it'll be interesting to see again if that's going to be the MO going forward for the NBA. If they're going to stay with this type of format. If so, I think it bodes well for the Pelicans on the box office.
It does, and I think it makes sense for the league as a whole. And I wrote this at CrescentCitySports.com. There's been a lot of talk in the NBA in recent years. Push the start of the season back to December 1. It's going to be for the next season, but also or closer to Christmas, because Christmas Day to most people is when the NBA starts, because football is starting to wane. You have those 5 games. They have TV to themselves on Christmas Day. You have 5 games, and that's when people start paying attention to the NBA. So, in fact, I wrote that they shouldn't even try to salvage this season. They should have just shut it down and said it's a lost cause. Let's go ahead and shoot for December 1st, December 10th, whatever the date would be, and get away from the NFL and college football's shadow.
Yes.
Start the season when people are used to paying attention to us. We go deeper into the summer when the only competition is the dog days of baseball.
Right.
And you finish your finals before the next football season starts.
Makes sense.
It does make sense, and it may work out with the start of next season, but I think what they're doing in Orlando was just an unnecessary impediment. Right. They should have just said, we're going to do this right, and we're going to come back with a new season in December.
It's been a rough year for the NBA. You know, starting off with the situation with China, where they put a lot of their eggs in China's basket for future revenue, et cetera. Where that revenue was coming from, to the COVID-19 shutdown, to now. It has been a really tough year. We're going to get into college football next. It's going to be a tough year for college as well. We'll talk about that next. Les East of CrescentCitySports.com and so much more is our guest. I'm Eric Asher. I'm your host. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Let's hear from our underwriters.
Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family owned and operated since 1989. Burkhardt has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhardt's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhardt's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Experiencing rough weather with a bad roof can be a nightmare. It doesn't have to be.
Suburban Roofing, because when it comes to roofing, there is a difference.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Thanks so much for watching this evening. Les East of CrescentCitySports.com is our guest. All right, a lot going on in college football right now over the last 24 to 48 hours. First, the Ivy League came out and said that they're canceling all fall sports, including football. And then the Big Ten comes out today and says that, again, they're going to be moving to a conference-only schedule for all sports this fall. The Pac-12 has talked about the possibility of following suit. The rest of the leagues are kind of holding serve right now, not making a decision one way or the other. This is about money. And it comes down to, this is about money. When you look at the Ivy League, they don't make a lot of money with their sports. So, and again, you're looking at the Ivy League and saying, okay, to them, they can go without sports for the fall, and they'll be doing just fine. They've got their large endowments. It's not a money generator for the Ivy League. Right. For the Big Ten and for the other, again, Power 5 conferences, it is a huge money generator in terms of that. And also, again, then you go to the Group of 5 and the FCS schools, which again, in a lot of cases, their programs are made on the backs of these big games that they have, where again, they're a sacrificial lamb. They go to the stadium of a Power 5 conference. They're getting that $1 million payday. In a lot of cases, they stretch that money throughout the entire season to be able to have the opportunity to be able to, again, finance all sports. For the Big 12, they're looking at it as, again, these are games outside of conference that maybe some of those games would have been money games where again, they'd have been on national TV and they'd have got a nice paycheck. But the others are, in a lot of cases, are, again, Power 5 teams, or also, again, the FCS. For instance, Tulane plays Northwestern on their schedule this year. They will not play Northwestern. That is a loss for the Tulane Green Wave in terms of their ability to be able to, again, get that revenue that they were expecting for their program. Do you think there's a domino effect here, that, again, we will start to see more Power 5 conferences say, you know what, we'll go conference only, which again leads to a dramatic loss for both FCS schools and also the Group of 5?
Yeah, I think the elimination of all non-conference games is the best case scenario, because I don't think we're going to have a college football season in 2020. If you have it, I think it's going to have to be done without the non-conference games. You go ahead and play your conference, you can keep the postseason structure in place. But college football has the hardest job of any of these leagues at any level to try and play in 2020, because you're talking about, at the FBS level, you're talking about 130-something schools. You're talking about all these different conferences and commissioners. You're talking about the NCAA. You're talking about the CFP. You're talking about the bowls.
Right.
That is a lot of chefs in one kitchen trying to figure this thing out. And on top of all that, the biggest problem they have is most universities, it looks like, will be doing part or all of their teaching online. So how can the universities say, we are going to deprive our students of their normal in-class experience 2 or 3 days a week or all together, but the football players have to come to campus and put themselves at risk and go ahead and prepare for the season because we need the money? I don't think they can sell that anywhere, and I think it's very, very difficult for them to have a season in 2020, and I think the elimination of the non-conference games is the first step toward that reality.
It'll be interesting to see again what happens there. Now, quickly to LSU and Tulane, and I want to get a little depth into Tulane and LSU. Tulane has not had any positive coronavirus test since their kids came to campus. Okay, so again, they've been in a great situation there. Ed Ogeron said that the report there were 30 players that were either tested positive for the coronavirus or were exposed to someone that tested positive for the coronavirus, that those numbers were greatly exaggerated, and that the tests are proving that within the LSU football team that those that are testing positive are way down. Be interested to see again how that plays out. I am one that thinks that you could probably play professional sports in a bubble. I don't think you can play college athletics in a bubble. I just think I think we've already saw that with, again, the super spreader event at Tigerland. Okay, we had over 100, we had all students and kids that were up and back, including LSU football players and athletes that were involved in this. You know, going out, partying, going to parties, doing things you do in college life. And then expect, again, not for this to be able to be passed around the entire football team. We've seen this with Mercer. We've seen this with Cole's flu. You've seen it in locker rooms, how quickly this spreads throughout the entire team, staff, etc. So again, that is a question mark going forward for coronavirus. But it is good news that in this short period of time that we've seen right now, we're not seeing the explosion of cases that maybe a lot of people thought we would.
Yeah, that is a good sign. And, I didn't even get to the infection aspect of this in saying I don't think there's going to be a season. I just think logistically bringing people back to campus under these circumstances is, and getting everyone to agree on how they're going to play a season is untenable. Then you take into account what you just pointed out, that the threats of spreading the virus, and there are undoubtedly going to be cases of it in all of these leagues.
Right.
It's unavoidable. We've seen that throughout the country, that this virus is going to spread. So I just think college football, for that reason, on top of everything else, really has a tough way to go. And, we'll see. I'm sure they're going to do everything they can to do it as safely and practically as possible, but I just don't see how it happens.
I think it always comes down to the almighty dollar. And I think they're going to try to play the season, because of what football means for the revenue for all these athletic programs across the country. Now, whether they're able to get that done or not will be up in the air. And I can see why they're going to more conference games as well. Remember, every single state has been on a different timeline. There's been no national, push to be able to get everybody, doing their own thing, doing one thing instead of states doing their own thing. So different regions are going to be in different phases of where they are in terms of the coronavirus shutdown. So again, it's, if you're Michigan and you're playing Washington, it might be difficult to go out to the West Coast to do that, because of maybe an outbreak. So I can understand from the conference saying, let's keep this within the conference and not have to worry about, again, the long travel out of conference. We'll see how that kind of works out. Let's talk about Tulane. One thing I found interesting here in this offseason, Will Hall has been working with the Saints offensive coaches. Kind of taking a page out of the LSU book, integrating the Saints offense into the scheme. I think it's a perfect fit considering the type of athletes Tulane gets, just like I thought it was going to be a perfect fit on the type of athletes that LSU gets. If Will Hall, who again is already a pretty great offensive mind, has the ability to tap into what the Saints are doing, again, right down the block here, again, that can only enhance Tulane going forward, not just in terms of what they're doing on the field, but the ability of what we're seeing right now at LSU to be able to recruit better athletes that want to play in that type of system.
Yeah, and I think probably the most significant development in Willie Fritz's tenure, which has been a pretty successful tenure, was bringing in Will Hall and getting away from the triple option attack that had served him so well in so many other places. But it was time to move on to a different type of offense. He hired a very good coach, someone who Ole Miss wanted to be their offensive
We thought he was going to be.
Yeah. And did a good job last year. And I think working with the Saints coaches will only help Will Hall. And as you point out, they have the athletes and probably will be better able to recruit the type of athletes they want as they open up the offense. And so I think it's an exciting time for the Tulane program, and it's especially an exciting time for the Green Wave offense.
Big question for both LSU and Tulane is at the quarterback position. Ed Daniels of WGNO 26 here in New Orleans on his Sports Zone program this week had a one-on-one with Will Hall where he talked a lot about his quarterback position. Again, we all know, we talked about in this program, I've talked about it previously on my radio shows, that, again, they're looking for a grad transfer to come in and to take over the quarterback reins. Keon Howard has experience at USM. He is the odds-on favorite now. One of the things Will Hall talked about was he likes his quarterback room. Michael Pratt, the freshman out of Florida, has been in school, so he's had a chance to be able to, again, learn the system. Justin Ibieta out of Country Day. Guys that I've had on this program that have watched him in high school tell me he is a future NFL quarterback. So it's going to be interesting to see, again, how this plays out in the quarterback room with Tulane because, again, there's a lot of inexperience, much like we've seen with LSU.
Yeah, and I've not seen a lot of Justin Ibieta. I've actually seen him play more basketball than football, but I've certainly seen highlights, and I've talked to a lot of people about him, and I hear the same thing. I think for Tulane, ideally, they don't want to have to make Justin Ibieta the starting quarterback as a true freshman. Maybe he comes in, wins the job, and proves to be the guy they need to get to where they want to be this season. But I think they prefer to have a more experienced player at that position. I think they expect Keon to be that guy. And to be able to guide this offense and let Ibieta maybe get some snaps as a freshman and ease into that position and have a really good career down the road.
Yep, no doubt. Good news, bad news for Tulane. Good news is they've got a deep offensive backfield in terms of running back. The bad news is Corey Delphine, who had been granted a 6th season by the NCAA, his college career is now over with an Achilles tendon tear. He was the leading rusher, returning rusher for the Tulane Green Wave. And look, he is a dynamic player. Yeah. You cannot understate the loss he is going to be for this team.
Yeah, and it's a shame because he had gotten that extra year and was looking forward, I'm sure, to having one more opportunity to contribute, and he would have been a big part of this offense. So it's really unfortunate for him and for Tulane.
Shift to LSU. First of all, they got their rings. And again, I mean, it's like they found a treasure chest because not only get one ring for the national championship, they got a ring also again for the college football playoffs, and they got a ring for winning the SEC championship. So 3 rings on the players' fingers at one time as they got their rings. Interesting comments by Coach O on Big Noon football. He talked about again this being a great opportunity. They got a lot of hungry guys on the football team, but the interesting quote that really caught my ear was, "We have a roster right now that has as great a talent as any year that I've been here." Now, you're talking about a team that won the national championship, went undefeated, had a season for the ages, and might be the best college football team in the history of college football based on what they achieved this year. They lost 20 players to the NFL. 14 were drafted, 6 undrafted free agents, and he's telling us he's reloading and he's got a better team than maybe he had last year.
Yeah, I don't buy it. They do have a lot of talent. If you go by recruiting rankings, they have done extremely well. And maybe in a year or two, that team might be comparable to last year's team. And I think that's really his point, is that we don't have the experienced guys that we had last year, but the potential because of the talent and the depth, this team could become at some point what last year's team, or this group could grow into the program and eventually be part of a team that's as good as last year's team. But the 2020 team is not going to be as good as the 2019 team. They're going to be very talented. They're going to do a lot of good things. They're going to win a lot of games. But probably the best season in the history of college football last year. This team's not going to be able to match that.
It does go to the recruiting, though. When you look at, again, how well he has recruited LSU. Again, you look at the 2018 class, 2019, to the 2020 class. You look at the 2021 class that's coming in, that is not signed but is verbally committed. Again, they're getting the best of the best. And really, again, more of a national program in terms of recruiting, where, again, Les Miles, others really wanted to put a fence around Louisiana. Doing that, trying to get the best out of Louisiana, but this is a program that now recruits nationally.
Yeah, no, I think that's one of the things we've seen under Orgeron in the last few years is the reach that he has had nationally. And they don't have to get a lot of guys outside of Louisiana or the immediate area. But if they can go out three or four times in each class and go to Pennsylvania, go to Ohio, go to California, go to Arizona, and supplement what they're going to get from Louisiana and the surrounding areas.
Especially if there's a position that's down in the state.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And, and sometimes, this isn't as true as it used to be, but sometimes your big, strong linemen, especially on the offensive side of the ball, comes more often from the Midwest than the Deep South. I don't think it's as true as it used to be, but sometimes that is still the case. And so you have to go other places to pick out 2, 3, 4 guys to supplement a class. And if you're able to do that with regularity, then you go from being a top 5 class to maybe being the number 1 class in the country. And he's flirting with that year in and year out.
Year in, year out. Now, he spoke about the quarterback position on Big Noon as well. He said this is a position where we're going to have to show up in order for us to have a success. He says Miles really has a strong arm. He's very talented, but we can't expect Miles to be the next Joe Burrow. If he's Joe Burrow, then nobody's going to be disappointed, I promise you that. But we're not going to put a lot of pressure on him. We've got a lot of talent. We got a lot of good receivers. We have to make the right decisions at the right time is going to be key. Now, again, Peter Parrish, who had been in the system, he is gone. He is suspended. He is off the team as of this moment. Again, that leaves you with Miles Brennan, T.J. Finley, Max Johnson. T.J. Finley, Max Johnson, incoming freshman, not a lot of experience there. Miles Brennan, a little bit of experience, but not really a lot of experience in terms of playing time. As I mentioned, mirror images of what we're seeing at Tulane as well with the quarterback position. So again, if Brennan, and this is the other key here, and you have to really, this has to be taken into account. You can protect the quarterback all you want, but you got a little thing called coronavirus now. If something happens, again, where you lose your starting quarterback, first of all, you worry about the quarterback room, right? Because those guys are together a lot. But then now, both those programs, LSU and Tulane, will be going to true freshmen, true freshmen to be able to take over if something like that happens.
Yeah, Miles Brennan is the only quarterback on the LSU roster who has taken a snap in a college football game.
Right.
And he's thrown, I believe, 75 passes, something like that. Not really played when a game's been on the line. And he's the guy that you're counting on 100%. And I think he is going to be fine. He's been there for 3 years, came in with tremendous credentials, very strong arm, has played enough to have gotten his feet wet in the SEC. And he followed Joe Burrow around for 2 years, but especially last year, the magical year. And he soaked up everything, just like Joe Brady did with Sean Payton and Drew Brees.
Drew Brees, right.
He did it with Joe Burrow, not just in terms of practice and throwing the football, but in the film room and in meetings and leading the after practice runs. I mean, doing stuff with the quarterback gains respect of his teammates.
Right.
He paid close attention to everything Burrow did on and off the field. And the coaches and the players respect him. They trust in him. I think he's going to be fine. He's not going to be what Joe Burrow was last year, neither is anybody else in the country. But I think he's going to be fine. But you're right. You take him out of the equation and everything changes. And I don't know if there is a graduate transfer still out there who could somehow come in and give him a little.
At this late date.
Yeah. I don't know if there's anybody out there. I think the kid from USC already went somewhere else.
He did.
So I don't know if there's anybody there, but certainly LSU would be in the market for someone just as an insurance policy. But I think as long as he's able to play, I think Miles Brennan's going to be fine. I don't think it's going to be as big a drop-off as some people fear it could be.
Right. Also talked a little bit about, again, the changes to his staff. Scott Linehan coming in. And again, what he's going to bring, again, with, professional pedigree. And then Bo Pelini, again, shifting this defense completely when you talk about scheme, et cetera. Matter of fact, in the conversation that he had in that interview, he talked a lot about the fact that he's the assistant defensive line coach, being Ogeron. That, again, he is now hands-off. And unless I can remember us talking about this on the radio show and on this TV show, again, about what Ed Ogeron was going to have to do to be successful, to be that CAO. He's been the CAO or the CEO of the football team, but yet again, it has his stamp and his personality on it as well. This is Ed Ogeron's football team. Nobody can deny Ed Ogeron, again, is the heart and soul of this team. But the fact that he, again, now delegates and allows coaches to be able to coach, and I thought that was a really telling comment. I'm the assistant defensive line coach. Okay, I'm hands off. Bo's got the defense.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing he learned with the failure at Ole Miss was that you can't be a head coach the way that you are a position coach. You have to hire good people, trust them, and get out of their way. You can have input when it's appropriate,
right?
But for the most part, you have to delegate and trust, and you can't do that unless you hire good people. He probably regrets hiring Matt Canada because Steve Ensminger had done the job the first year. That was probably his one mistake. Otherwise, he has surrounded himself. And Matt Canada is not a bad coach.
No, he's not.
He just
wasn't a bad fit.
It was a bad fit. But for the most part, he's made very, very good hires and surrounded himself with good assistants and let them do their job. I think Bo Pelini was the perfect replacement for Dave Aranda. He's done the job. He knows LSU. He knows the SEC. He has a more aggressive, simple way of playing defense. I think Dave Aranda tried too often to get a pass rush with a three-man front.
Yes.
And I think he confused his players
Right.
with an overly complicated system.
I would agree with that.
I think Pelini will be more aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
The players will get in the backfield more easily, and he'll turn them loose more because they won't have to think so
Right.
much. I think he's the perfect replacement. Scott Linehan, I did not see that hire coming.
No.
Makes a lot of sense. I think he's going to be one and done like Joe Brady was.
Well,
but
it'll be interesting because, again, Nussmeier, part of the reason why Garrett Nussmeier is coming to LSU, is because of the relationship with Linehan. So it'll be interesting to see again how that plays out. But yeah, you're right.
It could be.
This could be a stepping stone to another.
Sure. Remember, he's only passing game coordinator.
Right.
He's not even the offensive coordinator.
Right.
He is. He's had a lot of success as an offensive coach in the NFL. I mean, 2 years ago, he was the offensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys when they almost went to the Super Bowl.
Yes.
The guy knows how to coach offense. I think this is an opportunity for him to put himself back in the consciousness of the NFL.
Yeah.
And I think he'll be very successful, and he'll have opportunities to go back to the NFL if he wants.
I agree. And again, all teams right now are involved in strength and conditioning workouts. That includes LSU, Tulane, all the schools around the state. They're also, again, what we know is that Ogeron talked about, the players themselves are holding those informal workouts. Critical, especially when you don't have experience at the quarterback position, to get these guys out there practicing with each other, throwing the ball around. That's good. Now, they're preparing for that football school that's going to be the new pre-fall camp. That's going to be allowing teams 6 hours a week for meetings, 6 hours a week for walkthroughs with the ball, and that period is scheduled to begin on July the 24th. So, again, this month we will see these guys getting back into practice.
Mm-hmm. Well, and hopefully there will be some sort of normalcy there. You know, one key here that there's so many aspects to this that fly under the radar, but you know when Joe Burrow did a nice job of getting the players together when the coaches couldn't be around and organizing these workouts.
Yes.
Now you not only need leaders on the team to organize these voluntary workouts, but you have to have players you can trust to do so in a safe manner.
Yes.
You can't have these voluntary workouts if guys aren't practicing social distancing.
Right. Or if they're heading out to Tigerland at night, going to party, and then they're
Yeah.
coming out and then they're exposing their teammates to the possible coronavirus.
Right. So leadership on the team
Right.
takes on a whole different meaning beyond what it already was.
I would agree. Let's shift gears to the Saints again. We know that the first 6 to 8 rows, and it's going to be the first 8 rows of the dome and across the NFL now, is going to be tarped off. There'll be now advertising, and they'll go on there to try to make up some of the revenue that the teams are losing in terms of attendance. The Ravens announced this week 14,000 fans will be at their stadium for game day. That is an 81% cut in capacity from their 71,000 fans that they have. And they're like the Saints. They sell every single game up in Baltimore. What do you think happens here in New Orleans? They have been very, very non-committal on what they're going to do, kind of watching what's going on here. But again, I think we have to prepare. The thing that really struck me is Baltimore is an outdoor stadium, okay? And that's what I think people have to remember here. The Saints play in a dome. Even some of the domes out there now that are more modern, they can have the retractable roof where they can open up the roof. And again, I think, the preference would be on all those stadiums, they would have the roof open during games, no matter what the weather is going to be because of the coronavirus. Saints are in a tough spot because they're in a dome, and they're in a dome without a retractable roof on how many fans you can have in the stands.
Yeah, the Saints are in a more challenging situation than most teams. I think what the Ravens have announced that they're going to do is basically going to be the norm around the NFL. The numbers will probably vary from city to city, but I think for the most part you're going to have a very small number of people, relatively speaking, allowed into these stadiums, if anybody gets allowed in.
Yes.
I don't know if anybody's going to get allowed in, but if they get to the point where they feel it's safe to have a limited number of people in the stadium, social distancing, I think it's going to be similar to what the Ravens have already announced. But how do you enforce that? I mean, when Drew Brees throws a 50-yard touchdown pass to Michael Thomas and the Saints go ahead of the Falcons, are people going to stand 6 feet away and wave to each other? Boy, that was fun.
They're going to be
hugging. They're going to be high-fiving.
Right.
There's not going to be any social distancing.
Right.
So it's not that much different with 14,000 and 70,000, other than obviously it's more people. But the interaction, you can't control the interaction.
No, you cannot. And again, you could say, okay, we're going to allow families to be able to go. Again, the same family that are, but they're going to interact with other people. So it's be interesting again how this kind of plays out going forward. Uncharted territory for everyone right now. Preseason now cut to 2 games, 1 and 4. Weeks 1 and 4 eliminated. They'll play Pittsburgh and Houston on a home and away. Pittsburgh away, home for Houston. $8 million on the cap right now for the Saints. What do you think they're going to spend that on? I still think that the backup cornerback position, a guy that can play either left or right side, that can play out on the outside man-to-man, is the biggest need for this team. Your thoughts?
I would agree with that. I think basically they're in a position, and they've been this way for the most part over the offseason, is we're talking about depth.
Yes.
They're pretty well set with their 22 guys, as well as just about anybody in the NFL. So they're trying to find those right pieces. I think another pass rusher could be helpful. There's not a team in the NFL that wouldn't like to have another pass rusher.
A lot of talk about Jadeveon Clowney. I just think he's outpriced. He's going to have to take a major pay cut to come to the Saints.
Right. It would have to be like Cam Newton, where you go out there and you find out that the market value isn't there. Although apparently Clowney is open to the possibility of a 1-year deal to try and win a ring and figure he'll make up the money on the back end. So if that's true, maybe he becomes a viable option. But depth in the secondary, particularly a cover corner, would be something I think they would be looking at. Somebody like Clowney or maybe a more economical pass rusher, I think, would also be a possibility.
Biggest question mark for this, and you just said it, the team is set for the most part, right? Even what they've done in the offseason in terms of the additions they made to these teams, the veteran additions, have really, again, those are guys that could step in immediately for you, and you're not going to miss a beat in a lot of cases. What's the biggest weakness on this team going in?
Oh, I don't know if there is a weakness. I think
question mark.
Yeah, I think the biggest question is Drew Brees.
Drew Brees' ability to play, or Drew Brees' ability to be able to get the team behind him once again?
Potentially both. I think number one is his ability to play. Is he still going to be able to play at a Pro Bowl caliber level? I think last year, the injury was part of this, but I think he's starting to show his age a little bit. He's still very good. He may well lead this team to the Super Bowl this year. But I think he's getting in that age range where you can see a drop-off in productivity. And if he does that, or if the team struggles, then the underlying feelings about the whole social unrest potentially comes into play. I think as long as he's playing well and the team's winning, they can kind of put that behind them. I think they've sort of done that already. But those two kind of go hand in hand. But primarily, I think if he can continue to play very close to the level he's been playing at, then they're a Super Bowl contender. But if he shows some sort of drop-off, then they're not.
Les, thanks for being with us tonight. Always appreciate you joining me on the program.
Thanks, Eric.
That's Les Cease of CrestCitySports.com. I'm Eric Asher. Again, thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE-TV at 10 p.m. Also, you can catch it on Pelican Sports Network. That's 9 p.m. every Friday. Also coming very soon, actually within the next couple of weeks, there'll be a second showing on Pelican Sports Television. That'll be 5 o'clock every Saturday afternoon. All right, I would like to tell you can catch me on the radio, but again, the Sports 1280 flipped their format last Monday. Hang in there. I'll have a new destination within the next couple of weeks. Just can't divulge that now. So you'll be hearing very, very soon on the radio airwaves. Until then, we'll let you know what's going on there. But again, special thanks to our friend Les Cease for joining us on the program. Also, the WLAE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Naila Jones. Good to see Naila again back today. Alex Chacon, Tommy Failer, and my director, William Hill. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks to our fantastic underwriters who make this show possible. Thanks to Les Cease. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.